Flushed. All right, are we ready? Oh, okay, good. Great. All right, continue on here now. So we're at the Penn booster station. So this is a water booster station that basically takes the water from the water treatment plant and pushes it up the hill to the penitentiary, but also supplies the Churchill water system, Stampede and Ag Barns, and Dorva. We've had a number of issues. So in 2012, their study was done saying it needed to get upgraded. In the last couple of years, we've had a number of issues with low water pressure or no water pressure up at basically at the Stampede, Dorva, and Churchill water system. So we had been pushing this off a year or two at a time, but we've realized that we might as well do this now and upgrade this. We have a number of issues for it. The station's about 40 years old, and it's underground pumping station. So normally you don't put water pumping stations underground. You put them above ground or build a big structure for them. So this thing is to start the engineering and some of the preliminary work on replacing this with a new above ground station that's actually built to handle all of the demands up on top of the hill. So for now and in the future. Fred?
Is there any, would there be any lobbying with the federal government since they're on the advantage end of this?
So the federal, really, good question. I guess there's a two-part answer. We'd always lobby the federal government every chance we get. But they don't have actually an issue with their system. So one of the things they have is a large water tower up there. So they can fill on a trickle basis as much as they want. Really, the big issues we have right now is there's no adequate fire protection at our Stampede and Ag Barn. And then we have a contract with Kneehill County for the Churchill water system that we have to guarantee that our water stays up to them and provides them. And so we're not meeting that requirement right now. So, but at the same time, we can also, by doing this work, we can also fill the penitentiary much faster than what we have right now. So Tom was next.
Yeah, I know we've talked for a number of years about the potential of getting water to Wayne, and one of the suggestions has always been going through the penitentiary system, the Churchill water system, and going overland. I'm just wondering if this new facility would be powerful enough, big enough, more conducive to continuing looking at that possibility.
Yes, yeah, we'd certainly be able to do that. Again, you're putting a system in there that's not unlike the Churchill system. Basically, you're filling up your very small diameter piping. You could do it there. If you were going to put in a system that had fire protection on it, then you probably would need to do something in addition to the Penn booster station. You couldn't just provide booster pumping there to take it all the way to Wayne and expect to have water pressure that was adequate for fire protection. So. Lisa?
So that being said, so 2020 it looks like when you're actually planning on doing the booster station upgrade, is there plans or are we budgeting for upgrades to the lines for, say, the Dorva and Ag Society areas, considering, I mean, it's been operating at less than stellar pressure volumes. So I would suspect that we would be foreseeing perhaps some issues with those lines once we have the system up to the pressure that it should be operating at.
So the reason that the pressure issue is all because of the booster station. So really what we would be doing is looking to flush those lines and clean them out. There's adequate, the lines are adequate up there, like as far as sizing goes, and we haven't had any leaks on the lines that haven't been around the booster station. So, but that would be part of the work we would do this year, just to see whether or not there was anything that we should be doing up there, to be able to provide proper pressure and flow to everyone. So.
Gotcha. So I know I was actually looking at purchasing a property a few years ago, and especially in the fall or just before fall, when the farmers got ready for harvest, the water pressure up there was just a trickle out of most of the taps in some of these properties. So you'd mentioned that we're not meeting what we're supposed to be meeting for volume-wise. Are we seeing any contractual penalties or anything in regards to?
We're not, because I think they understand our issue. So they're not laying any penalties on us, because they also know that some of the farmers, so their system is a trickle system as well. So what it's supposed to do is the water is supposed to trickle into a cistern at the homes up along the highway, and then you're supposed to use the water from that to use for your household water. And what's going on instead is that some of them have basically plumbed right into the systems and are not using the cisterns properly. So if they're using their system and the cisterns, there wouldn't be an issue with respect to flow that they have there. So
Yeah.
having said that, they are also, I don't know where they are in the process, but last year they did a design for a reservoir up on the top, like right near their station, so that they can actually have more capacity up there, because again, they're recognizing that part of this is an issue, and they want to be able to expand their system into Nehill a bit further. So,
Perfect, thank you.
other questions? No, Fred, you have a question? No, I can
Just
see.
wondering if we're going to lobby Nehill then to be a part of this.
So Nehill's already a part of it. Again, the Churchill water system is Nehill's system. So they pay us they pay us two parts. They pay us a capital, I think, from an old agreement, plus they pay us a consumption for the water that's being consumed. So again, what we're trying to do is basically make their reliability better by fixing this issue on our end. So
Have we been putting some of that money in reserve then that we've been getting from Nehill to?
it's been going to pay off our costs from the system before, if I'm not mistaken, Barb.
So the answer would be yes, because part of their payment every year forms part of our revenue, which forms part of our unrestricted reserve at the end. So, into reserve for
Right.
all the repairs. So
Yeah.
ultimately, yes.
Good questions. Anyone else? No? Okay.
If I could just mention, that would never be funded by MSI. That's a correction, because we don't ever use our grants for utility supported expenditures unless it's a utility grant.
Yeah, and so then you could, again, our goal would be to look for grants that could actually maybe help offset the cost of this as opposed to paying for it. So the Water for Life is a provincial grant and we've been on the receiving end of a few of those over the years. So. Okay. Okay, next thing on our list, just make sure. Water mains. So this is the last year of kind of upgrading some of the downtown water mains, the bigger lines that we've had a multi-year plan on. So last year we did about $250,000 worth of work. This is the last big project to do. So, and then valve replacement downtown core is sort of part and parcel of that. So. Fred, you. Christine?
Oh, sorry. Just curious why it's 400 then for 2019 and why you just didn't do 200 and then 200 in 2020?
They're all project related, Christine. So so for instance, next year we're taking a break. And then we're going to do 200 a year after that. That's our plan. We have to get an update on where we need to do water mains in town, because again, most of the stuff in downtown area has been done, but there are some other lines that need to, whether it be in Bankview or Midland or Newcastle to look at. So, but this 400,000 is basically to do the last big part of downtown. So, any other questions? Exactly. Yeah, that's right. So, yeah. Okay, any other questions on that? No? Yes? No? Okay. SCADA, Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. So this is part of the master plan for water system. Basically, this is a system that is electronically controls our water and our wastewater system. So this is standard in water treatment plants all over the world now, where you basically have something that monitors and adjusts doses for chemicals, turns pumps on and off depending on the demand, etc. So again, we had a 5-year plan to upgrade our SCADA system, and so we are in the second last year of that. So we spend $25,000 a year, give or take, on that work, and we expect to be done completely next year. So. PLC replacement is the part of SCADA, so programmable logic controllers. So that's basically the brains that allows the SCADA system to do these things like turn on pumps, turn off chemical dosing, etc. So next on our list, water tower THM control. So THM is the industry acronym for trihallomethanes. So trihallomethanes are a byproduct when chlorine is fed into the water system, and it's been in a contained area for a long period of time. So if it goes into your water mains and then out your tap, it's not an issue. But if it sits very long in a reservoir or anything that's enclosed, it's kind of like an off-gassing process, and it turns into trihallomethanes. Why this is an issue is that it's actually a federally regulated number that's you can't exceed it because it's a carcinogen. Sorry, carcinogen. No, it's cancer causing. I forget now if that's the same thing. Yeah, so it's carcinogen. Yeah. So again, you need to actually do some work on it. So we're right around that limit of where we have to do something about it. So again, we're looking to do it on a couple of towers, a couple of water towers in town to be able to, and basically if you're doing mixing so it doesn't sit, so the water doesn't stagnate, then you can actually get rid of the TA or minimize the THMs.
Sorry, I guess I'm a little confused because I thought prior to your time, Daryl, that when we put on the solar bees, they had mixing arms to cut down on that.
So solar
Is that not the case?
Yeah, no. So the solar bees right now are in the raw water reservoir. So that's before any of the treatment.
Oh,
these
gotcha,
are in the water
towers.
towers. So like the Newcastle, Greenview, etc. water towers. So.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Fred.
Sorry, Daryl, you'll have to refresh my memory. No, we were talking about in our water management about extending our number of days that during an emergency that we can have water. Will these cover those amounts if we, if we're saving so many days now? If we know that we're going to have a heavy spring, we're going to put more water in these. This will do any capacity then?
So this has nothing. Yeah, this has nothing to do with capacity at all. This is the water that's been treated, and it's been sent to the central water tower, for instance, downtown. As an example, so the water tower is full, consumption's not not draining this thing fast. So this is like a blender that keeps the water fresh so that it doesn't create trihallomethanes. So it does, yeah. So is it good, Tom?
Yeah, will we have to put one into the old water tower? We use that as kind of a emergency reserve.
So we'll eventually put these into all of the towers. So we're gonna do a couple. So we have them spread out over the next 4 purchases over the next 8 years. So the idea is to put them into. I think the first tower we're doing. I think it's Greenview, but actually, now I'm trying to remember which one it is. It's Bankview, sorry. I think it's Bankview we're doing first, but eventually we'll put them into all of them. So again, some of them, and THMs are a function of contact time, so the longer it sits in there, so some areas the water gets used more quickly than others, so those would be the ones we'd be putting in later on. The ones that are where there's lower consumption is where we'd be spending the money right now to put it in. So. Anyone else? Questions? No? Good. Good questions. Very good. So, Water treatment upgrades, so low lift pump upgrades. So this is the low lift pump station, which basically takes the water from the raw water reservoirs and pumps it under the river and into the water treatment plant. So these pumps are starting to go again. They're 20 years old, give or take, and what's happening is the impellers are starting to wear out, and they're actually starting to get basically pitted, and there's holes going through them. So it's a matter of replacing these things with new 2 new pumps. So. Good. Any questions? No. Lisa.
Sorry.
No,
In my
that's
mind,
good.
I'm just thinking, so the lines are getting pitted or the
pumps.
pumps,
So the
okay.
pump. So a pump has
cavities.
the pumps have an impeller on them, and
Yep.
that's basically the little turbine that makes it spin around. So those are starting to get just eaten away just from time. Right. It's not due to anything else. Just it's time. But the pumps are so old now that we've been repairing them, kind of MacGyvering them for a while, so it's just time to replace them, put new efficient pumps in. It should lower our costs on electricity when we use them, and it'll be a more efficient system to bring water across.
Okay, so is it one line with 2 pumps?
Oh, now you're asking me. It's
I'm just
it's
curious.
2 lines. I think it's 2 lines across the river, and you have the ability to move back and forth on them. So, but the important part is it's 2 pumps in the pumping station that both need to get replaced. So.
Okay, thanks for humoring me.
Good. That's good. Good question. So, okay. All right. Next on our list is HVAC system, so exhaust fans and makeup air units. So these are again in the water treatment plant. So this is a matter of again, inside the building, you've got corrosive elements because you're using chlorine gas, you're using ozone in there. And so you need to be able to exhaust that stuff, and then also have fans that make up the air, so you're not negatively affecting the air pressure in the building. So we're looking to replace 2 a year for the next 6 years in a row. So they're about $30,000 a piece. These fans. So, Jay.
Thanks, Daryl. Barb, my rough calculations put, if we throw in the 100,000 that you mentioned should not have been allocated to MSI, and hopefully will come from money or Water for Life, but again, that's a gamble. The total transfers from the water reserve are starting to add up to serious dollars for 2019. $940,000 is what I get. And I know that's an aberrant year. After all, that water reserve is nowhere near where we'd like it to be.
Correct. And
$1 million hit would be substantial to its overall volume, would it not?
You have 1.2.
Yeah.
Expenditures.
Yeah, I knew my math was rough, so if it's even higher, the question is more relevant. What is the
I'm just going to look where we're at. Jay,
Okay.
honestly, I haven't, sorry. I normally give you this big sheet that has all the balances, and I'm not there yet.
Okay.
So we haven't had a serious discussion on funding. We tried to get stuff to you on what's on the
Right.
horizon, what we're looking for. There
Okay.
may be some adjustments coming back once we actually look at funding, but I'm just going to try to pull that reserve balance.
Okay, that's okay. So long as it's coming, that
Yeah.
we'll do the rest of this at some point before the vote happens, that shows the impact on
Yeah.
reserves.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to even say the number off the top of my head, but we could be talking about using half or more of the reserve, of the water reserve, in 1 year, when we can't see what's coming down the road for major investments that might be required. And I know that the wastewater reserve is, I think, in worse shape, but
It's worse.
the
Yeah.
ask is actually much, much lower.
Right.
And so anyway, just bigger picture, wanted to get a sense, and since I didn't see that impact on reserves as we normally do, just wanted to get a sense. And it's okay if you're not ready to do it right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mentioned earlier at the
Starting to build it.
Yeah, and I'd mentioned at the beginning, these are just all sort of the things. Now, interestingly, in the water side, though, other than that Penn booster station request of 100,000 this year, pretty much all of this it's from last year's, like this looked like this last year.
I'm showing, so again, I wasn't part of the initial
Okay.
capital, I had to skip the capital meeting. But I'm showing, based on this information, 1.17 of new. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there's 540 in one line, so that doesn't surprise me. But
Right, we'll bring it back with
It may
our,
be a matter of, was it, so I had questions myself, for example, is that in addition to the 400 last year? Do you know what I mean?
right,
We have
yeah, I don't,
okay, so long as we get a chance to see the math in terms of the
Oh, yeah.
overall impact and,
Yeah,
and where we're
we
going to be
will for
leaving
sure.
ourselves.
Yes.
You know, it's been, you know, as much as this council, like every council I've served on, has struggled with what do we charge for water. You know, we added an absolute token surcharge a number of years ago. I think it was before your time, Barb. Like, and I don't know. I don't pay the bills in my house, so I actually don't know if it's even still on the water bill. But this is the kind of thing that we're talking about, where, you know, 1 year's worth of major infrastructure reserves, all of which is worthy, all of which needs to be considered, all of which needs to be done, could potentially be devastating. You know, when we were building that reserve up by an extra surcharge of $1 per user per month. It's ridiculously, woefully inadequately funded. I mean, we wring our hands about trying to make the utility as cost efficient, cost effective, but more importantly, trying to assuage the fears that are not backed up by the facts that people here are overpaying for water. The truth is that they've underpaid for so long. We're in no position to actually say that the place is adequately funded as a utility goes. And so almost $1 million hit to that reserve, if none of those costs can be borne by other funding, it should be deeply concerning to unless we're all going to be really surprised by the state of that reserve. But I don't think I'm going to be. There's no way we have more than $5 million in the water reserve.
no.
In fact, I'd be surprised if it was 3.
We're at 2.6 at the end of November.
Geez, I'm good. So there we go. $1 million hit is significant to that reserve. Not saying it can't happen or shouldn't happen. I'm merely suggesting that next year, when the utility rates come up again, we should be talking about not just total cost recovery. The utility must be ready for 30 years from now. And how do we do that if we're only collecting an extra $1 per user per month to try to fund the reserve? And it was just a token starting point that's never changed. If we were going to adequately fund that reserve, the utility rates here need to be dramatically higher. And none of us wants to do that. That's why we went for this program in the first place, to avoid the massive sticker shock of what actually needs to happen. But as soon as we get people paying for what it costs to operate the place, we're not done. Not even close. Then the next step is so that they're going to be there to be operated for decades to come, and the funding of that infrastructure is going to have to be coming at some point, because we've all just been saying these small changes, these incremental changes, have been hard enough on everyone that we're not going to do the rest. But we are in charge of making the hard decisions, and adequately funding the reserve for this absolutely essential utility has been put off too long. Anyway, here endeth the lecture.
So nice segue, thanks Jay, nice segue too. If you looked, and just kind of takes your point one step further, is that, so if you looked at the 2020 budget in that point, right now there's an item in there that's $4 million. This is completely put in there on the predication that Alberta Environment might tell us we might have to do something like this, right? So this is an Alberta Environment requirement. We haven't been told that.
For which we've already begged forgiveness.
Correct.
For a number of years already.
Yeah.
That this new standard that they've required, for which we are not prepared to meet, because of course they're allowed to raise standards and not provide money to help us do that. They've said, okay, fine, we'll give you a break. But they absolutely have the authority to say, so that's over now, please come up to the current standard, and at that point we will have no choice but to borrow up to the maximum of what we are allowed to borrow.
for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that work was done for the study that sort of will hopefully lend us good fortune on it was done last year. That was work that we had. I think it was a report or not a report, but engineering service we brought before council. So it's right now in with Alberta Environment. So we'll hear sometime this year what we're actually what their decision will actually be on it. So just as a
Sorry, Jay, I just want to go back to, you mentioned something about a token dollar, and that kind of confused me.
I can't remember.
So that's not happening now.
It's not?
No, I just looked at my utility bill and I don't
Gotcha.
see. So I don't know when that was.
It was, remember, I'm long of tooth as far as the rest of these guys go. So, I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, Lisa, but it was very early on in our tenure, Tom. So we could be talking about 2011, 2012, and it may have only actually lasted a couple of years, if that. Its intention was not just last forever, but to grow, and then we never really revisited it. And so I'm just saying that it needs to be back on the front burner for all of our utility discussions. I think we've made the clear business case to the community that we don't pay the most for water in Alberta. On the contrary, we don't even pay the most in this area. And so to have a utility that's responsible and sustainable means not just funding its operations, it means funding its infrastructure for the future. And we'll simply have no choice but to consider that once we've got all operations looked at.
Thank you. All right. On to sanitary sewage. Any other questions on the water stuff? So on to sanitary sewage. So we have $50,000 for PLC replacement and SCADA upgrades. So same thing as we did on the water side. So it's a couple of years, except we're actually looking at it over a longer period of time to do that work. The LED lighting upgrade is, I think it's a mistake. I have no idea what it is. I can't tell you. So I think it was put in there by error. So.
Yeah, I was going to say that perhaps there's some provincial grants in regards to some such green technology, if that was going to be the case.
Yeah, I think, I don't know what it was put in. Yeah. So. Cemetery, next line down. Sorry, dumping station upgrades. So sorry, dumping station upgrades. So at our wastewater plant, we have haulers that can bring in wastewater and dump it into our lagoons. And right now it's a little bit of a honor. There was supposed to have been a system in there that basically charged you. You entered, it weighed your vehicle. When you entered, it weighed it when it left, and you paid a commensurate rate based on that. The system was installed but never operated. And so this is... or never finished. So what we're doing is actually finishing it so that we can actually allow the haulers to come in any time of the day or night and actually charge them an appropriate amount for this material that they're dumping off for us. So, yeah. In the past, it truly was an honor system, so which wasn't a great system at all. Yeah. All right. Cemetery. So phase 3, so last year we did dirt work there, so we did all of the rough dirt work. This year we're going to put fencing around it. We're going to fence the whole area and then start to do some landscaping there with the idea that start to do, basically get it ready for usage in a couple of years' time. So, so it involves doing those ribbon strips where between the grave sites, as well as some tree planting and other things in there. So, Fred, I can see you have a question. Are you dying? You're not dying to ask the question, are you? Oh, so he's here all week. So, okay. Any question? Any on that one? No. Okay, good. Beautification. So we're looking at, so this is basically looking at our work around town. So doing the stamped concrete in the medians around town, planting some trees in those medians and doing other stuff along there. So The work this year is going to be doing the medians that were where the paving was done last year, so in front of Drumheller Chrysler, as well as on Bridge Street from the bridge north to Grove Street. So looking at those two, plus some smaller pieces along number 10 highway. So 20.
Daryl,
Sorry.
I just like you in your meetings with the highway maintenance guys to ask them to look at the work we've done and to keep that in mind when the dirt and crap sits there for half the summertime, that we need them to have buy-in in this beautification as well.
Yeah. I thought they did a pretty good job last year, Fred, but maybe they missed a spot. No, they did not? Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
You're misremembering. We had to specifically rattle our saber about May long weekend and the fact that there was that most of the gravel was still on the ground.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
It's okay. I can't remember yesterday, so let alone a year ago.
No, I just meant, I thought they did it. I just didn't mean that they did it early, yeah. So you're right, they have to jump on that, so Tom?
Yeah, will this include replacement of some of the trees that have died, basically, over the last, like down Bridge Street, for example, did all the landscaping on the east side with the spruce trees and all that kind of stuff.
Ago, yeah.
And a couple of those are dead now.
Yeah, so, yeah, those are pretty small things that we'd look at replacing. We actually have somewhere in here, I thought we actually had a tree spade identified. Now, why can't I find it? Oh yeah, we do. So we're actually wanting to do more of we'll get to that in a minute, but basically we want to be able to do more of our own work with all of the trees we have at the tree farm. So we would be looking to replace a lot of trees around town, so. Okay, so that's beautification. Trail development, basically we're just, again, the extended, this is starting to develop some of the trails. Oh, sorry, Christine, I apologize.
It's not a big thing. I was just curious, just talking about the trees and the medians and stuff like that. So obviously these trees aren't going to become problems being in the medians in like 10, 20 years time with the roots and that kind of thing. These are all down root
the
trees.
Province, as a matter of fact, only allowed us to put certain trees in there because they didn't want, so a great tree from a quick cover would be a poplar, those columnar poplars. Those were a non-starter because the roots are so shallow. So they've allowed us few types of trees in there only. So the Caraganas were in there last year. I guess we're one of the ones allowed. But yeah, the idea was to put something, they have a variety of restrictions in there, but the idea is to put stuff that doesn't affect the pavement or push stuff up, so.
Sorry, Daryl, while we're on that real quick, those, whatever shrubs or what trees or whatever, they're never going to grow higher than the actual directional signage it's close to most of those medians, are they? Because they're going to get lopped off by the farm equipment coming through town.
Yeah,
right?
so they'll be part of our trim plan. They have a maximum, they grow to kind of a maximum height anyway, but we have a requirement to keep them at, I believe it's 7 feet,
okay.
2.1 meters.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll become part of our trimming maintenance for those trees. So.
If you go through Airdrie, I think it's Airdrie, they have a lot of those Caraganas, and they're absolutely stunning once they get to a nice height.
Yeah.
And they fill out and stuff, so they'll look good. It's just they don't want any umbrella kind of trees to block sight lines.
Anything else on beautification? No? Okay, good. Thank you. So trail development, so we've had this, we put it in 2 years ago, and we've spent about $25,000 a year just doing pieces of trails, new trails in there. So last year's money was spent on 575, extending the trail in front of the Brooks Brooks Asphalt little strip mall there. This year, again, we haven't identified where we're going to do it, but the idea is to be able to do these trails throughout the valley. So we'll create more of a active transportation corridor. So, questions? No.
Has transportation commented on? Remember, we talked to them at that AUMA about that section.
Yeah.
Have they responded.
They have, and basically what they've asked us is to come up with a cost estimate. So that's what we'll be tagging or tasking our new consultants with, is coming up with an estimate to look at the idea of taking that unfinished section of 575, the dirt gravel area, and transforming that into something that is more of a trail system and taking the roads or shortcuts through there. So, and looking at that over a longer period. So, good. Any other questions? No. Okay. Aquaplex. Oh, Aquaplex. Oh, sorry, Fred.
Sorry, I noticed we skipped over the spray park, but we know that there's going to be work there needed this year. There's nothing in the budget.
Well, it's 25,000, and I didn't know if it was going to be, I needed a discussion if it was actually an operating maintenance.
So yeah, if we were going to do any work, so I think what we determined was that if we were going to do something, so council would bring that back to council, then really what we would do this year is nothing to that pool. Like we would just let the fountain, like, because we can still do that. But if we were going to repair it with the idea that we're going to keep it long term, then we needed to spend more money on it. But if we were going to look at doing a spray park instead of that, so some alternative, and that's why there's money in the 2020 budget for that. So,
did we not have a concern that the whole park was being undermined by a leak, though?
Well, we had a concern about it. Like, so we know there's water disappearing. There's a lot less water than was disappearing a year ago when we fixed the major leaks in there.
Okay.
So again, our part would be
no issues then. You don't think?
I wouldn't say no issues.
Nothing
Again,
we should budget for?
if council decided that we didn't want to do a spray park, right, and that'll be part of another bigger discussion. Then when it comes time to extra stuff, then we would definitely need to do some work in there, and fix those leaks in there. If you recall, I believe that cost was $185,000 to fix all the leaks in there. So it made a good sense to not do that and to actually look at something else. So,
but you don't anticipate we're going to have any major issues if nothing's changed from last year?
So we operated it last year for 6 weeks after we repaired it, and there was no issue. Like, I would not say that we'd never have an issue there because we don't know what it looks like underneath. But the idea is that we would operate it this year in the summertime, and with the idea of actually replacing it next year if that's what council decides we want to do. So, Jay?
It's the right time after clearing it with Daryl on the most preliminary of discussions. I went to Rotary today for the first time in 7 months, and mentioned just so that they would be aware that we were having some hard decisions to make around whether or not to reinvest in repairing this 30-year-old fountain or looking at another way to go. And asked them because I'd heard that they were beginning to start to shell away money for a centennial project, which for the club to be 100 years is 5 years away, which doesn't really fit our time frame. So that if we were going to ask them to partner on a spray park expansion, they might need to retool what they were putting money away for. And my recollection from this when it was built is that, of course, the vast majority of funding was gathered from a provincial grant that we were able to be eligible for because the Rotary Club of Drumheller was involved, and their actual cash outlay was quite small, as it typically is, and a lot of gifts in kind for the town of Drumheller. So I asked them to merely to be aware of the fact that this is on the table for discussion, but before they heard it on the street, to hear it from us that we wanted to make them aware that it's possible there could be some changes there, and more importantly, to gauge their interest in being a partner on a potential project if, in fact, additional spray park was to move forward. So I asked them to just take some time and come back to us within a month or two about just to get their original interest on whether or not they want to talk about a partnership, knowing full well that we're talking about 2020.
Tom?
Yeah, I would like to see considerable public consultation on this. After we saw what happened, the uproar in the community when the fountain was actually closed down for a while, I think there's an awful lot of interest in the community in this. And if we are thinking of replacing it, I would definitely like to start the public consultation as soon as possible and look at all sorts of alternatives and because I think the public is going to be very interested in this.
So I think, and you remind me, Tom, that at the last meeting we had 2 weeks ago, I actually misspoke when I said that we would be going out for public consultation on our budget in February. What I meant was we would go out after it's presented to council for first reading, so it would be in March. And that's what I think is a perfect time to bring that as one of those options. So, Christine?
I'm kind of with Fred on the concern of what might be under there. Is there any way we can have that looked into sooner than later? Like,
So
is that
yeah, we
expensive?
talked about getting a sonogram or I think it's a sonogram for something larger, which you can actually look under structures to see if there's voids in there. So you can't do it right now because it's frozen and everything. But the idea is before we start actually filling it this summer to look at hire someone to do that work. So
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, because again, if I would not, if we knew there was a big void under there, then my recommendation as a professional would be to not open it at all, right? And fix what we had to do. But again, you need to be able to do some investigation first. So.
Sorry, so do we need to put any money aside? Like, is that an expensive thing or
No.
to have them?
No,
Perfect.
it's about 5,000.
Okay.
So we can.
The picture of the dam break in Brazil kind of comes to mind. The whole thing sliding into the river.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Thanks for that enduring memory. So. All right. Any other questions on the spray park that we have right now? Okay. Aquaplex. Was your microphone on? So, all right. So we had some work identified as part of a phase 2 for the Aquaplex, which was to do the women's changing room, which meant ripping out the showers, putting new showers in, new flooring, new paint, do the flooring in the men's changing room in the entranceway, and then also put in what was described as a heater for our air handling unit to be able to heat the air up on the outside. I won't go into the details at all about why we aren't doing that, but with respect to the heater. But what it turns out is that doing that is basically like throwing money away. It won't actually accomplish the problem. The problem in the Aquaplex pool area itself is just high humidity. So you cannot get away from, if you go inside and look at the Aquaplex right now, you'd see that the stuff that we've painted a year and a half ago, there's starting to bleed through with rust because of the water in there. So we've tasked the consultant that did that work to come up with a plan to look at putting a new air handling unit in, which will solve all of those issues. And really this issue it should have been looked at originally. I think that everyone kind of overlooked it when they did the renovation, when we did the renovation 2 years ago, thinking that just new piping would actually fix the problem. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like putting new piping and not changing your furnace out. So, so it's one of those things that again, if we want to protect the asset that we just spent a couple $1 million on over the last couple of years, it's, in my mind, one of the more important requests for new funding on here is to actually fix this right. Because right now we're using fans and opening doors in the wintertime, trying to let some of that moist air out, and it's not working well at all. So, no. Well, and it's just, you're not, all you're doing now, if you open the door today, all you're doing is letting lots of cold air in that's still humid, and you're not fixing anything at the end of it all. So we would look to see if, and again, our goal would be to see if there's any grants available to help us with this. Maybe there is through ATCO and the province. They have some energy efficiency grants if you're looking to replace some things in buildings and wanting to try new technology. There is some funding for it. So again, that would be part of our requirement, is look at alternatives there. So, Jay?
Thanks, Daryl. I need Tom and Lisa to help me with their recollections, and yours as well, because of course I think you came in the midst of this renovation, right? Daryl, not at the beginning?
Yeah,
because I remember you toured us around,
yes.
right?
Yes,
but
I
it
did.
was well
Yep.
on its way.
Yep.
I
was there from the beginning. Or I was there from the beginning of it. So.
My recollection is we didn't overlook this. My recollection was that there was money in that bid for the HVAC system because this was foreseen. Is it possible that with all the overruns on all the additional things that were going on, with all the unseen concrete that had to be drilled out, that there was no plans that said, hey, this pump, it's not supposed to be encased in concrete, but it is 4 feet thick. All those additional expenses on all the additional problems that were happened once the floor was opened ate up all the money for that? Because my recollection is we saw this coming.
I wish I could say yes. So what we saw coming and what we had budgeted was, I think it was about $32,000 to add a heater to a unit that's on the roof on the back of the building.
Oh.
And the thought was that adding this heater into a heat recovery ventilator unit was going to solve all the humidity issues in the building. But the problem, and again, whether we cast blame or not, at the time the preliminary engineering was done, they probably should have looked at the air handling unit and seen whether or not that was actually the problem. That someone just threw out the idea that, well, if we'll just put a heater in because we never bought it with a heater in the first place, that will solve all our problems. And when we had a big meeting last August with the contractors that were involved with the pool, as well as the consultants and a few pool specialty people, and basically they said, like, sure, you can spend the $32,000 in there, but that will not cure your moisture issue that's in the building. You're not taking the air out of the building fast enough and circulating it properly. Okay, and that's
so my recollection is accurate that the topic came up.
Yes,
but the solution was meant to be another piecemeal. This ought to work, and it won't be that much money versus the real investment in the
correct
right infrastructure to fully fix the issue.
Correct. Yeah,
that's frustrating.
Yeah, it is, because we had thought like we were moving ahead with this last year because it was in 2018's approved capital budget. We were moving ahead, going to put that in, and then we just had all of everyone that was involved with it before come out and look, and they basically said, well, you could do it, but you're not going to solve the issue. That's
so we didn't spend the $30,000 on
Correct.
the heater?
We did not.
Oh, that's
there's
the only thing that's good news about any of that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I know we can't foresee the future, but this Aquaplex is probably hard on you guys as much as it is on council, because it's feels like this white elephant that we're constantly throwing money at. So the best of your predictions, so we've got this air handling unit and we've got to renovate the bathrooms, which obviously won't be done in this.
It would be done, so it's carry forward from 18.
Okay.
So our plan is to do it this year, in 2019.
Okay, so there's nothing else we can see. So then the whole thing is kind of, other than this seniors problem, which we have with the not able to touch the floor.
Right, yeah. So notwithstanding that issue with height challenged members, everything should be good in there for a number of years. And I know the comment has come up, well, we should have, with the money we spent, we should have actually built something new. So just remember.
No, wrong. Yeah. $20 million, right?
Yeah.
Not $2 million.
Right.
20.
Yeah. I was just going to say, so, we didn't even change the concrete basin. Yeah. So.
We were so dumb that we could have bought a new one for $2 million, but instead we poured it into an old one.
Yeah.
Can't take it.
So, there are some things that sometimes you want to say that it does make sense to build, but in a case like this, other than getting something that's to today's standards, and you're right, like you're probably spending, even a basic one is probably $15 to $17 million. So yeah, they're not cheap to build these things, unfortunately. So, and we don't foresee anything else. Again, this was, if this heater had solved the problem, then this $300,000 wouldn't have been in here, right? We would have spent that money and be done with it. But again, looking at it and taking that, are we gonna MacGyver this system, or are we gonna do it properly, knowing we've just spent a lot of money in here and we want to keep our asset in good condition? So.
Yeah, so no, all I was going at was, thanks though, Jay, for your passion. But I was just going at that exactly what I wanted to do is just clarify that, this has been redone, everything's been put in place. Yes, there'll be a few things come along the way, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it would take $20 million to have what we have today. And right now,
Yeah.
we
It's
should
far
be.
more efficient and effective for us to do what we've done. Yeah, so.
So just further to your original comment, Heather, in regards to height challenged individuals, is there any type of solution that we could implement?
So the one solution that the pool manufacturer recommended is to actually peel the pool liner back far enough so that you can actually pour 4 inches, 6
Of
inches of
concrete?
concrete, and then put the pool liner back on top of it. If we wanted to do that, we're probably, a ballpark estimate's $100,000, right? So, I think they have actually been using off and on little devices that they put at the bottom of the pool that were in the old kiddie pool side before. You can't put anything with a sharper edge on it because you don't want to puncture the liner. But I thought they have been experimenting with some blocks or something to try to help people out. But I haven't heard anything lately at all about the pool or whether they're doing that on a successful basis or not. So
I know, just to correlate with that, I've heard from a couple of older ladies that they decided not to renew their membership because, I mean, at the end of the day, the water's to their nose and it's not enjoyable for them,
yeah.
so.
Oh, I absolutely hear that's an issue. And if I think if in retrospect, if you could go back and knowing that it was built exactly how it was spec'd to be built, but no one thought that it probably should have been raised by 4 or 6 inches in that. Because if we had done it before the liner was in, we probably could have done it for $5,000 or $10,000. So it's
Gotcha.
now having to unweld the liner, peel it all back, and now it's not just getting Daryl to do it. Now you're getting the Mirtha Pool Company to come back and do it also. There's where the cost is on it. So
Thank you.
Well, if they could just keep looking at, some option for those,
yeah.
for
Again, I
those
know
people that are shorter.
the pool staff have been looking at it. Again, that's why I thought that they had some blocking there, but that was a few months ago when I heard that. So you can ask that question again. So, any other questions on the pool HVAC system? Okay. New controllers. So this is just a couple of, this is regular thing would have happened no matter what we're doing with the pool. So these are just chemical controllers for our pool and hot tub. They tend to go every number of years, and it's just because it's over $5,000. No, it's new capital. So yeah, so. Okay, any questions on that? Anyone there? No? Okay. Next one is tree spade. So we're looking at some parks equipment. So what we're looking to do is, instead of actually trying to find someone with a tree spade and hoping they're free and available, we're looking to purchase our own tree spade that can be mounted on our front end loader. So it's just a quick release coupling. Based on what we paid last year to move about 25 trees, this would pay for itself in about 2 years' time. So that's Fred?
Can you give us an idea of what kind of inventory because I know we've had a tree farm up top for quite a while. What's the inventory look like up there? How many trees are up there?
Yeah, I was going to say, it looks like a bunch of trees, but it's there's probably, I would say a conservative estimate, of the trees that are usable, because again, there's some columnar poplars that you can't move. They're just too big now. Probably about 400 trees could be utilized from there. And there are a variety of species. So there's coniferous, there's a bunch of deciduous, there's some trees that flower, like fruit trees and that. So, yeah.
So should we be hit with the elm disease in our community, because there's lots of elms, we will have the capacity to go in and remove them as we find them diseased then?
Yes. Yeah, and actually what we're planning to do is, if this is approved, is to actually, part of our plan in 2019 is to start to do a tree replacement. So we've lost some trees due to age and winds and stuff. For instance, in Riverside Park, some stuff downtown, is actually start putting some of the trees from our tree farm in the community so that we can now then put new trees in the tree farm as well. So
when you take the tree out up there, could you put a beaver back in the hole after? Like,
That's a great question.
We
So
can
you want
try.
you want them eating all our trees at the tree farm?
Oh, I'm just saying that we're going to go into the season when the beavers are knocking down all the trees along the river. So
Yeah.
maybe once we have a hole built, that would be a great place to put them.
Okay, we'll take that under advisement. So, Christine? Do we,
Okay, sorry.
we can come back. No.
I completely forgot. No, I didn't. So just talking about like putting in trees downtown and all sorts of places. Are we able to, so across from the Oasis gas station, I'm like kind of off and there's that other median with grass and stuff in it. Do we have power over that, or is that Alberta Transportation? Because that would be nice if we could put trees there to try to make that area look a little bit better.
When we got the little bushes where we had some of the fake rocks put along the median, so
Uh-oh.
by,
Sorry. No. Where are you talking about it? On the North Drumheller? Oh, so that piece in front of by Jerry's Welding in there? So that's actually what, I believe it was Tom or Fred spoke of earlier. There's a few dead trees in there, so that's that's our responsibility, and that would be something we would be changing this year, so. Yeah, that's not very long in there. It's only like there's already trees and bushes that are in there that the town put in a few years ago. And some of those trees just they actually died from assault, right? Like from the salt on the road. So putting in something that's more hardy there and replacing the stuff that's there, so. Yeah. Any other questions on a tree spade?
Needs to be approved.
Okay. Ice edger, so this is for a replacement for one that is not safe anymore for our arena. So basically this is what allows you to go around the edges of the rink and work the ice up so that then you can use the Zamboni to do all of the flooding of the rink properly. So again, replacement of an existing one, but the existing one is just, it's deemed unsafe, so. No, you need to have its own. It's almost like a walk behind lawnmower that you have. So actually, yeah. So okay, at the BCF, we've got a couple of items in here. So one of the things that has been a bit of a bugaboo for me is that we want to put a digital sign in the lobby so it looks professional. Like there's nothing that says congratulations on your wedding by having it written on a whiteboard in ink. Like it looks terrible. So absolutely, we want to look at replacing or installing something in there that makes that look more professional in there. So questions? No? Okay, good. CCAN, so this is basically purchasing a sea container to put for storage out there. So I thought we actually didn't need it in here because we have found a couple extra ones at the shop. But anyway, so yeah, I think it can come out. That's what I heard from Kevin. So yeah, so this was an additional one. So one of the things, just more of an interesting point, because of course, you can always do better after the fact. But the BCF was very well designed, very well built, but there are certain things missing from it. So there are an absence of storage and an absence of actual usable office space. So if you're taking for instance, a bride as a client to the BCF to show her the facility and then talk business with her, right now what Erica does is she brings her into the office that's at the back of the kitchen because that's the space, right? Like my sense is that was supposed to be used for a chef or someone in there as opposed to kind of office space. And that's because that space is quiet. There's actually, if you wanted to go downstairs and up to the front, there is the office where Darren sits, and then there's an office that there's 4 people in that kind of go back and forth. So storage space is a challenge there. So if we need to store tables and chairs and some of the things that are used in the facility, right now it's either being stored somewhere inside against something else, or we've been using sea containers. So that's an easier solution for sure.
Daryl, Tony will definitely remember one of the things that our architects insisted that there needed to be for the fieldhouse component that wound up being the least well-designed element of the fieldhouse is the team rooms. They're simply not used for the design purpose at all. So while not quiet, what's that space is it being used as storage now?
It is. So I know one of them is being used as storage. One for sure is being used, and perhaps because I think there's 3 team rooms. Is that correct?
Two or three or four maybe.
Yeah, or maybe there's. It makes sense. There's 4, an even number, but so maybe 1 or 2 of them are being used as storage for all of the stuff that gets. That's
Can they be retrofitted with telephones, et cetera, to be used as office space? Because you're right. I mean, where to place the booking specialist and where to place the marketer person, that was never ever factored in because we had the actual design didn't include a staffing model, right? And so we just didn't have that information, but we were going off of city field houses have team rooms, those indoor soccer teams that are going to spring up and be using the facility most are going to need a place to meet, go to in their break and all those kinds of things, and everybody's got them. It's just being utilized by no one for nothing.
Yeah, I know Darren did mention, because we've talked about that before, about utilizing that space, and I thought 2 of them were already storage space. So maybe the idea of putting the C-can is to get some of that storage out of there to be able to utilize it. So I have to get back with an answer.
At least one of them is being used as kind of a staff locker room. The others, I don't know.
I can see that too.
And I think, and I think actually to that point, Tom, that's kind of their break room.
Again, something that was never factored in, and there was all kinds of hope that there'd be so much synergy that the staff would share the break room of the library and those kinds of things. That never happened, and so I mean, when I look at the facility and all the things that are amazing about it, the least well designed element in terms of usable space were the team rooms. So if there's a way to repurpose those without incurring a lot of expense, it just seems to make sense.
And I know Darren and I have spoken about it. I just don't remember what we had talked about with those. But it's
because there's nothing in there.
Yeah.
They're not even plumbed, right? There's not even a water fountain in there. I think it's just a room with hooks on the wall.
I think so. Just a kind of it's just literally a little change room.
Yeah.
So no, it's a okay. Sorry, Tom.
Are we on equipment yet?
No. Well, we are now. If no one else has a question on.
So I was just wondering about pickleball equipment.
Can I ask a real question first?
So I'm just wondering, this 30,000 is probably intended for the Life Fitness
Correct. Yeah.
equipment, which is very expensive, and it's very good, and it's very well used and very worthwhile. I was just wondering if there is anything, or if that's going to be in just maintenance and upkeep stuff. Like the pickleball nets are pretty much on their last legs. They are used very, very, very regularly, but they are kind of falling apart. The other thing I was wondering we did a little bit of sunlight mitigation in the last couple of years in that we put some automotive film on the southwest corner windows and some of the upper windows to allow usage of the west part of the field house so that you can actually see a ball when it's coming at your face through the glare. Now, we've noticed that this has helped, but one of the sections of the window, the film has come off or been removed or whatever. And we're just wondering, I was actually talking to Darren, and he said, well, they look at it in this budget. I was just wondering, is that kind of stuff going to be included in this as well, or?
So it's not in the 30,000 identified, Tom. I think it'd be a maintenance item, if anything. Like certainly the replacement of the nets and stuff, because those aren't very expensive items. Yeah, is it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have a provision for replacement of basketballs and all that stuff. I actually think I just signed off some new pickleball nets and paddles, so it is in the operating.
Oh,
Yes.
it's you.
The other thing I'd bring up also is the floor. If you look at the floor in the field house, it is becoming fairly worn, kind of at the one end. So at the west end of the three segments that are divided up in the field house, the floor on the west end is becoming very worn, and it looks like it's because of the floor hockey, the ball hockey. Seems to be very rough on the floor compared with the other two segments of the field house. So I'm just wondering, are we looking at any kind of replacement eventually of lines and refurbishing or anything like that in terms of our long-term capital?
So Darren identified that as well, and I think what his next action was to have someone look at it to see what needs to get done, and before we actually put something in. So I don't think we looked. It certainly wasn't a 19 request. I think I'm not even sure if it'd be a 20 request, but he had to do some preliminary work on it first. So and I couldn't tell you if that was 5,000 or 50,000 for it. So there's no sense guessing on here with a number in the future.
So I have a question. Further to Fred's comment about leasing trucks, well, what about leasing fitness equipment? Has that been looked into?
Yeah, we have asked that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've asked that question before, and it actually is. It's more expensive to lease that equipment. Yeah. So, we have a maintenance contract. So we purchase the equipment, and then Apple Fitness does all of the maintenance on it on an agreed upon. So they actually do all of the equipment we have in the BCF. So whether it's lubing the cardio equipment or doing all the maintenance on it.
So do we sell the equipment that we?
Yes.
So how do we sell that?
So last year we sold it by bid. Oh, trade-in last year.
This year, we are selling by bid.
Right. So we'll be advertising once the new equipment's in, then we'd be selling the old equipment to the highest bidder. So.
I just want to clarify what I meant by leasing. I agree, leasing overall against purchasing is never a comparison. However, knowing the climate we're in, knowing the uncertainty with grants, knowing the uncertainty with population, knowing the certainty with the public's appetite for tax raises, there's a case for leasing, even though over 5 or 10 years it does cost more. It's still less out of your pocket right now.
Sorry, actually leasing would drive up our operating cost, right? Our tax budget, because leasing is an operating expense, which would mean we would need more tax dollars versus capital is funded out of the reserves, which is funded out of the amortization expense that we amortize every year to replace the equipment. So if we were to lease, it actually would drive up the operating cost more because it's an expense, not a capital item or expense.
Do we then depreciate equipment as well? So there should be a fund for replacing
Right.
trucks and stuff, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
absolutely. So I guess
Okay.
it would lower our amortization expense, but I still think our amortization would be less than the additional cost of the.
Okay, going forward with that, I understand that, but I still think in every circumstance it should still be an option, even if it's a left field option, to look at whether for the health of the community, if there would be even a short-term gain or short-term, let's say, less pain for the taxpayers.
Okay, and I think that is it.
So the $4.9 million bottom line, obviously, since it doesn't, since 4.6 was flood mitigation, but it's unfunded, is made up of only projects which are currently funded through reserves or expected MSI capital. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So generally speaking, you'll see, council can see on the schedule for the next 10 years that 4 million plus is not unusual. On the contrary, it's a little bit on the low side. because I would actually characterize this particular year's capital expenditures as the least sexy, least exciting capital expenditures I can remember for a while, because it is infrastructure dominated, not facility or playground or whatever dominated. There's very few nice things to point to and say this is what we spent $4 million on. That's why the business case needs to be made to the community on an ongoing basis about why the renewal of this infrastructure is so unbelievably important. And yes, you can't see all of it, but 2 million or 1 point whatever is dedicated specifically to water, let alone wastewater. What were you going to say?
Oh,
I was going to say the 4.9 on here is not the total of the capital expenditures for this year. It represents the unfunded.
Oh, that's the unfunded portion. Okay.
So I'm thinking, again, we've had some jigging this afternoon, so this is not exact numbers. But I was showing new capital, not counting the unfunded, to be around 8 million.
Okay. Fair enough. Either way, it's just
Yeah, I just wanted to.
My theorem holds in that it's not an aberration. It's a really regular year as far as capital expenditures go, but still, unfortunately, there's not a lot of, and we're getting a shiny new this aside, that we can point to and cut a ribbon and all feel great about. Because that's what municipal government is also about, is providing all those necessary services that require tremendous infusions of capital just to be sustainable. But there won't be any ribbon to cut on the Equiplex HVAC system, and there won't be any ribbon to cut on the
maybe on the pickleball nets.
Right. So. Yeah. So I guess we'll take the small wins where we can find them. I'm just saying that it's not always like this. There are often years where we get to feel great about a new facility opening and that sort of thing. But you'll see that for when it comes up, because it will come up, 2025 looks like the next time that we've punted the new ice surface and curling rink down the road.
Yes.
So it's on there. It's not funded in any way at all, but it's not as though we've forgotten about it. But realistically, again, we're talking about, unless other orders of government come forward with true funding mechanisms that would support recreation programs again, like the old Building Canada Fund, they're all just pipe dreams, because we simply are not in a position to build $20 million worth of facilities all by ourselves.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway.
Tom had a question too. So.
It's not. It was a statement.
That's
a question.
Oh no, sorry. Tom had a question. So, or maybe a statement. I don't know.
Could be both. Speaking of ribbon cutting, I just wanted to kind of congratulate administration on the lack of expenses, capital expenses required for the Public Works shop. Which I would have imagined, had we not purchased the new Public Works shop, would have been considerable. So that gives me two questions. Approximately, how much was spent to bring the new Public Works shop up to what we needed for basically the town's Public Works? And secondly, how much do you think that it might have saved the town in repairs and upgrades and changes to the old Public Works had we not done that? And a third comment would be, when are we going to cut the ribbon on the new Public Works shop?
I'll answer the third one because it's the easy one. So we talked about doing a public, and talked to Public Works about this, doing a public open house and ribbon cutting and everything, barbecue, in conjunction with Public Works Week, which is in May of this year. So it's an opportunity to actually have equipment all shined up, let families, have the little kids get on the equipment. We haven't talked to our fire department yet, but we get our fire trucks out there and actually have a bit of a bigger event than just simply, okay, here's a hot dog and cut the ribbon for this thing. So, and do it at a time when it's actually going to be nice outside for people to be out and enjoy it. So Public Works Week is it's around the May 11th to 15th in that range here. So more information will be coming soon. So that's that question. I think
So we had, including the salt shed, because we had 150,000, so 2,150,000 was budgeted for the new shop plus the new salt shed, and I'm carrying forward almost 200,000 because there is still some work for the electrical, and that includes some work already for the generator, electrical, yeah.
And we had earmarked 5
5
million
million.
for a new
Yeah.
build, right?
Correct.
So $2.8 billion in not spent.
Right.
It's not my kind of saving to call it saved money. It's just not spent.
yeah. And I think if I recall last year's budget for repairs, Tom, was probably around 75,000 for our old shop. Yeah, like there was some roof and there were some heaters and some other things. And yeah, and you probably would have continued to see more and more money spent on that facility as we went on with it. So yeah, it was definitely a good, and it gives the, everything I've heard about it from the staff is that they like the space out there. There's a lot more area. It's a lot, even though the acres of usable space are pretty much the same, the amount or the way it's laid out is actually way more conducive for storage than the old area was. And yeah, it seems like that's a good spot for, they seem to like it. So.
All right, anything else? Okay, well, I'd like to ask for a motion to go into camera, please, Lisa.